Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. And would you look at these thick ladies here? Yes, indeed. We're going to be taking a look at a replay between myself actually playing as the Empire, and we're up against a Vampire Coast opponent who has brought the thick lady squad here. Big Bess opening up shots, so we better take a look at the builds real quick. We got a gunnery white, couple mortars, Silostra, couple depth guard with pole arms, some deckhand mobs. We've got a couple deck gunners, shade wraith gunners, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Nice tight missile Death Star here. For my Empire army, gonna be led by the Emperor himself on a horse, hidden in the woods here with some crossbowmen. Nice detachment there with a bright wizard as well. We've got 3 great cannons. The Hammer of Witches is here next to the Emperor's forces. We've also got a front line of plenty of state troops with swordsmen, spearmen, Sigmar's sons mixed in there as well. We of course have some Empire Knights protecting. Ask me why this is important. Something to do with hounds. And a certain YouTuber named Tokshin. At least I think he's a YouTuber, might stream on Twitch as well. But anyway, we've also got an ace pistolier hidden in the back, and the artillery duel is already getting underway. I missed one shot, but Big Bess is focusing on the Hammer of Witches here, and we're going to soak up the effect that has on this piece here. Oh man, it is brutal, just absolutely brutal. Definitely not a fun time for the Hammer of Witches here. Especially with that gunnery white buffing it up. It's going to have better refire rate and accuracy and everything. Actually, quite a nice refire rate indeed. We are going to be counter-firing. Looks like the Hammer of Witches already shattered there. Shade Wraith Gunners opening up on the swordsmen in the front line as they come across here. Spearmen also taking some damage there as well from the mortars. Pistoliers operating around the back. We're going to try and get in and shoot Queen Bess's crew. But Silostra right on point, going to be summoning up some Ethereal Knights to protect here. So unfortunately we do get maybe one good volley, maybe even not that. Ooh, looks like one good volley there. The cannons are also counter-firing on Bess because she's such a big target. I now have the other 2 cannons in a position now to start firing as well. So looks like actually we just targeted the mortars instead, but Queen Bess is actually directly in the line of fire, so she's going to be taking some shots there. And this is the main issue with Queen Bess, is that when she takes a lot of shots like this, it's pretty bad. Her artillery model itself can get destroyed, but definitely getting some effective counterfire here. You can see another shot coming in, at least I thought. Yep, there it is. Just absolutely wrecking this great cannon crew, so able to get some good damage done, but there she blows. God, I'm sorry guys, I couldn't help myself. She's down now, and we're starting to focus on the mortars as well. One mortar piece is down, and we're starting to take out some of the crews. I'm going to start to switch targets eventually because I have a cavalry advantage, obviously. I mean, the Vampire Coast does have some Ghost Cav here, but we're going to go ahead and get these Empire Knights and Spearmen to zone them out. And you saw I kind of moved my forces forward and then I pulled back. This was to spread out a lot of the vampire infantry. You can see the zombies have kind of got all over the field spread out here. This is a bit of a mistake by myself pulling Franz up so early, so I'm going to go ahead and pull him back to the woods before he gets absolutely shot to pieces. My detachment of crossbowmen is just content to sit back in the woods here and provide some overwatch fire for the Sigmar sons, who have taken just an absolute beating at the hands of those deck gunners. Meanwhile, the depth guard, I believe, yep, no, just the zombies pushing through the tattered groups of spearmen here. The artillery overwatch fire, quite nice at this point, but the Empire Knights going to be pushing up and around the flank. Obviously, depth guard not fast enough to catch them, and my opponent getting a little bit out of position here. So just a quick note as we pop into a brief slow-mo here. I don't do this too often, but you want to keep these guys just nice and close to the deck gunners, these depth guard here. If you're in the Vampire Coast position, you don't want to get farther away, because the further away you get, the more you're going to have to overchase if I'm able to get around your flank. For those of you who watch American football, for those of you not from America, I would recommend watching a couple of American football games, just because you can kind of see these angles when the various plays are happening, and in addition to some possible formation ideas, you can kind of see these pursuit angles. These guys needed to stay nice and tight on the deck gunners, and it would have been a lot harder for me to get on them, which is my goal. I'm going to feint like I'm going back after these mortars here and then come back up and around because I have these other Empire Knights victorious over the Ghost Cab coming back as well. Overall, zombies not faring super well in certain aspects. The Pistoliers have regrouped, getting up in this pocket here, just kind of harassing these units, running around, being annoying, and generally making a nuisance of themselves. The Depth Guard here trying to push up towards the Crossbowmen in the forest. We're going to intercept with the Sigmar's Sons, what's left of them there, catch them in the flank and interrupt their attack order there. Meanwhile, this Great Cannon here, we're going to go ahead and drop the guns and run. The cannon crew themselves are faster than the zombies, so if you drop the guns, you can actually get away there. Meanwhile, Empire Knights have reached the mortars themselves, starting to finish off the zombie crews here. Proper interrupt. And yeah, we're sending some troops forward to start to bog down the last of the zombie infantry in the center. Balance power is still pretty even at this point, but I'm definitely feeling pretty confident about my chances here. I've got some pretty commanding positions, especially with the crossbowmen in the woods here. Karl Franz just hanging back until these deck gunners can be mostly shut down. One unit was quickly shut down by some Empire Knights. This the Queen Bess crew, what remains of her crew there, getting run down by Empire Knights. Meanwhile, the Shade Wraith gunners providing some good fire. The terror is definitely an issue. You can see a lot of the Empire state troops very tattered at this point, but we're going to go ahead and fix these deck gunners in place, hit them with a flame storm from the Fire Wizard, who up to this point hasn't really contributed too much to the battle. That flame storm, even though it didn't killed too many models there, it did a ton of HP damage and was enough to send these guys into crumbling as well. The state troops then can get in there and finish them off. Meanwhile, Franz and the squads coming forward. Vangeist's Revenge being called up in response by Silostra on the line of crossbowmen here, and they're going to have to book it. Unfortunately, don't quite dodge it in time. I do get some of them out of the way, but two of those units take an absolute beating. And yeah, so a bit of magic back and forth there, some nice flashy spells, but ultimately things are starting to turn in my favor here as the Empire and Karl Franz coming through. I mean, obviously, Silostra being ethereal will help her out in this situation, but with no support, and I don't recall my opponent summoning up the second unit of Bretonnian Cab. Not that it would help a whole lot in this particular situation, but the Gunnery White still providing some fire, so I'm actually going to just get Franz away from the Empire Knights. I figure they can kind of wear down Silostra over time. Franz is going to come over here and just step on the Gunnery White. do the hammer thrust, because that makes sense, and then yeah, come back around and give him a good old whomping. So Gunnery White, nice option here. Personally, I like to take him on the Crab a little bit more, just because it makes him a tankier in melee, gives him more HP, he gets armor piercing in melee, and tons of armor as well. It does make him a bit more expensive, but I definitely see what my opponent was going for there. Had I not had the cannons to counterfire Queen Bess, I probably would have been in big trouble there, but this is kind of one of the main reasons why you won't see Queen Bess a whole lot in multiplayer, because she's relatively expensive and just a big target against opponents which have direct line of fire artillery like cannons, bolt throwers, that type of thing. It's going to be tricky to make Queen Bess work because she's such a big target, and those artillery pieces are very good at counter-artillery fire at those big targets. I mean, even Hell Cannons are a risky pick, I would say, in that situation, and Queen Bess is even bigger. So yeah, a little bit of a rough situation. She did end up winning, so that just goes to show, as the Empire, you know, if you only bring one cannon, that's probably not enough to take down Queen Bess. You probably need to take more than one. I took 3 here, just because the Vampire Coast relatively slow. If you can win the artillery fight and force them to kind of come to you, and spread your artillery pieces out, just kind of spread your army out in general, because the Vampire Coast is pretty slow. You can really capitalize on your mobility that way. Kind of force them into isolated situations where their units won't necessarily perform as well. Definitely pretty fun build for my opponent. I see what he's going for there. I would maybe fine-tune things a little bit, and maybe we'll go to the post-battle screen in just a second and do so. But in terms of my build here, Empire State Troops doing relatively well in various pockets. I mean, when they could get one-on-one engagements with zombies when they hadn't been shot up too much, they'll do quite well. The Deck Gunners, though, doing quite well, doing some early damage. Same with the Mortars. Not a whole lot of kills, but at the same time, you consider that a lot of these units lost out to zombies, and, you know, that's not great. I mean, granted, Vampire Coast zombies are not terrible in terms of their stats, but they're not amazing, certainly. Silostra herself racking up 89 kills. I didn't catch it. She was dropping some ace whatever it's called, the breath spell, the wind spell for the Vampire Lore of Deeps. I'm trying to remember what it's called. I can't remember. Anyway, a Tide Call or something like that. Slowing down my Empire State troops and doing quite a bit of damage to them. Very good against low armor targets. Empire Knights definitely did well, helped shut down the deck gunners, and definitely, you know, in original iterations of this build I wouldn't have brought these guys, but I definitely think that having a couple Empire Knights and keeping them kind of like how I did, deep in reserve where they're well out of the line of fire, and then bringing them forward, you know, when you have a lot of your opponent's melee units tied down, they can kind of get around, try and get at some of the squishy missile units. My opponent's army didn't have too much of the mid-range AP like the zombie handgunners and so on, so just from a build perspective here, if we go ahead and go to the custom battle screen, making a Silostra Queen Bess build, let's see here. In terms of her spells, I would definitely say the Tide Call is probably a good option. That's what it was, Tide Call, yep. Spiteful Shot, also pretty good. Denizens of the Deep might be a decent idea, but she's already going to be pretty expensive. Let's see here. Fog of the Damned, pretty decent, but I would take this more so against offensive rush factions rather than a balanced faction like the Empire. This would probably be pretty good against, say, like the Greenskins or Beastmen, Chaos, those sorts of factions. Against the Empire, you're going to want to consider a more balanced build strategy. Vanguard's Revenge is a nice spell on paper. It does a ton of damage, pretty cost effective for the Winds of Magic costs, honestly, but the spin up time is pretty large and it's quite easy to dodge, so it's a bit of a risk-reward spell. I tend to favor going with a cheaper loadout so that I can go wider on my army. Kraken's Pull is a spell that I might consider. Again, pretty cost-effective for the Winds of Magic, and it's another nice control spell to debuff your opponent's speed. I might actually take this to try and pull down enemy heavy cavalry, although I would argue that the Denizens of the Deep is probably a more effective way of doing so, just summoning up some crabs. But we'll also grab the Flabellum since we're planning on spamming primarily these two cheaper spells, and then we'll kind of go from there. The Gunnery Wight, definitely a good option. I'm going to put him up on the Crab, and I usually cut the bombs just because I don't find them to be wildly useful. The Cackle Fruit, if you can use it properly, can be pretty effective. Has a relatively short range, so you have to be careful, but you know, there's an argument to be made there, but to make him nice and cheap again, we're just going to take the Enhanced Ballistics and the Dead Eyes, and then we won't worry too much about the items either. From there, we're going to go ahead and stack up some zombies. Definitely the polearm is a good idea. We'll grab a couple other zombies. We, of course, need Queen Bess and the two mortars. I definitely agree with those picks. Queen Bess, again, against the Empire, this might not be the best, but let's just say for the sake of things, you want to get a fun replay and send it to Dog Plays of you winning with Queen Bess against a pretty balanced, decent army. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Might take something like this, and then trying to think of what else would be good. The deck gunners are decent. Maybe I'd grab a couple of the regular ones. The Shade Wraith gunners I'm not the biggest fan of. The Discourage is nice, but the regular ones just a bit cheaper, tend to be more cost effective. Black Spot is going to be an excellent unit in this matchup because they're relatively safe from getting charged from heavy cavalry as long as you reform in time, where they can get their bracing bonus. They do have charged defense against large, anti-large armor piercing, and decent melee stats. They're the gunners with what are they? Bayonets, that's it. I'm a little tired today, guys, apologize. But, yeah, something like this, and then, I'm thinking what else? Hounds, probably a good idea. Just a couple of hounds to pressure the back line, try and get at those Empire cannons, crossbowmen, and so on if you can. And, ooh, we're a little bit over on cost. I would like at least one unit of crabs just to try and hold up heavy cavalry. If they do bring some heavy cavalry, kind of defend the cannons from getting charged at by pistoliers and so on. This build, notice, doesn't have the depth guard. I don't think the depth guard are going to be great here because the Empire also has pretty good shooting. Generally can spread you out pretty well. They are good, very, very good against heavy cavalry and elite large, but you're really not going to face too many monsters, and I think that's more so where depth guard shine. I'm also just not super crazy about depth guard in general. I know that's not a popular opinion, at least the polearm variants, but they just, on paper, their stats are not that good considering how low unit models they are. Like, if we just do a quick comparison here, just for giggles, I know this is a major side tangent, but bear with me. Depth Guard, if we compare them to Chosen. Now, Chosen Sword and Board, you guys, if you've watched my channel for any length of time, know I evangelized these guys quite a bit. They're an excellent, excellent unit in terms of their raw stats. 60 melee defense, 46 melee attack, 44 weapon strength, 120 armor. Let's just quickly compare them to the dual axe variant of the Depth Guard. Depth Guard, more weapon strength, slightly more melee attack, slightly faster as well, but they have less unit models. Keep that in mind when we're comparing these stats. They have 45 compared to 60, so 15 less unit models, significantly less HP, less melee defense, and in a game where melee defense matters a lot, that matters a lot, less charge bonus, they're not shielded, they have less armor. Granted, they do have frenzy and they regenerate in melee, but at the same time, like Depth Guard with pole arms, you know, obviously they have armor piercing, they're a little bit more defensive. Still, though, just across the board, the worst stats overall, except their speed, and granted, the frenzy does help mitigate that somewhat, but again, man, just that low model count means they'll get out-bodied pretty easily. And generally, I like the Crabs a little bit better as a counter-cavalry option because they have more mass, they're faster, you know, they also have the charge defense, good armor-piercing damage, not as much DPS, but they have the weight to actually stop heavy cavalry, and a little bit faster when you're trying to, you know, counter-defend, you know, against heavy cavalry, like in that situation where I was able to bypass that Depth Guard. Prometheans would have been a little bit faster, so you might have been able to catch them, or, you know, at least reposition more effectively. So something like this might work out a little bit better, but let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.